the Charlotte Hornets are in a prime position to take over the title of the most incompetent team in the NBA. This was held by the Kings for well over a decade, but they recently got their act together and have quite a formidable group now. But when we take a look at Buzz City, they've been a consistent mess for well over 5 years or so. Whether it's questionable decisions from management, their players being awful people, misdiagnosed injuries, or postseason collapses, let's take a look at everything wrong with the Charlotte Hornets. The first indication that this franchise didn't really have a clue what it was doing was their indecisiveness when it came to what they wanted to do regarding the best player to ever put on a Hornets uniform. After a couple of disappointing seasons following a playoff appearance in 2016, it seemed like Charlotte was looking to press the reset button. Midway through the 2018 season, it was reported that the team was pretty much shopping everybody on their roster, including Kemba Walker, who was coming up on a massive contract extension the following year. Now, it honestly made sense for them to move on from Kemba. He was by far the best player on their roster, and was definitely going to be the one to draw the most interest from other teams around the league. However, the way they went about doing this was totally incorrect. Michael Jordan, the Hornets owner, said he wouldn't trade Kemba for anything less than an all-star level player in return. This just makes absolutely no sense, because getting rid of one all-star for another all-star would just mean that they're moving in place. If they were going to move on from Kemba, the plan should have been to get as many draft assets and young players as possible. After over a year of making him available, the Hornets couldn't get a deal done, and then Kemba ended up walking in free agency to leave the team with nothing in return. The way the team handled this situation shows that despite them saying that they wanted to reset and rebuild, their motives for trading Kemba just kept them stuck in place for an extra year and a half. Although they didn't want to pay Kemba, they had no problem shelling out huge deals to other guys who didn't deserve the money that they got. Nicholas Batum got things started back in 2016 with an egregious 5-year, $120 million contract. While Batum was a fine player during his time for the Blazers, he was nowhere near worth being the highest paid guy on any team. And then a few years later, they gave a nice big 3-year contract to Terry Rozier, who was a backup for his entire career at that point. This left them with 2 guys in their starting lineup who were grossly overpaid. But they won up themselves the following season by making Gordon Hayward the new highest paid player. While Hayward had a great bounce back year in 2019, why they put so much faith in a guy who was on the wrong side of 30 and was just a 4th option on his previous team is beyond me. That contract is still tying them up to this day, by the way. Not that Charlotte has ever been a marquee free agent destination, but unnecessarily putting yourself in these financial situations due to these contracts once again shows their incompetence. Aside from the impotence on the front office side, I also wanted to quickly touch on their dysfunctional training staff. Just last season alone, far too many times, they either misdiagnose or rush back a player from injury, leading to them inevitably getting hurt again. Cody Martin had what was originally a quad injury, but ended up getting knee surgery and only ended up playing in 7 games last season. He's still out today and is yet to return. Next up was Kelly Oubre, who was permitted to play through hand pain for the first 3 months of the season, but then ended up having a torn ligament in his hand and also ended up needing surgery. Gordon Hayward, their aforementioned highest paid player, was also dealing with what was listed as shoulder soreness and tried to play through it, but it was later revealed that he actually had a shoulder fracture. This led to Hayward's wife calling out the team directly on social media, and rightfully so. On top of that, they rushed LaMelo Ball, who was their franchise cornerstone, back from an ankle injury before he was ready because the rotation was in a pinch, and he ended up re-injuring his ankle after just 3 games back. All of this was just last season, by the way. So this just goes to show another aspect of the franchise that isn't doing their job properly. Even though this isn't entirely the Hornets' fault, I had to mention it because of course it happened to them. As I mentioned earlier, the team struggled to capitalize on the momentum of their 48 wins in 2016 and missed the playoffs in the following 2 seasons. This led to Charlotte firing head coach Steve Clifford and replacing him with James Borrego, who led the team to a couple of play-in appearances, but they weren't remembered fondly as they lost both those games by a combined 56 points. The team let go of Borrego after the 2022 season and wanted to find someone else to lead them back to the playoffs. After hosting a round of interviews, they settled on Warriors assistant coach Kenny Atkinson. All was well for about 8 days, until Atkinson shockingly decided to turn down the offer and keep his assistant job in Golden State. His reasons for ultimately turning down the offer were fair, as he didn't want to put his family through another cross-country move after moving out west just the season prior. It just wasn't the best look that there was an assistant who would rather stay in an inferior role than take something clearly better for him in Charlotte. In response to this, the Hornets ended up bringing back Steve Clifford, the very coach who was fired and replaced by James Borrego, to now make it full circle and replace the man who replaced him. Clifford wasn't even one of the candidates who initially interviewed for the job. Once again, we can see the franchise making a decision that doesn't seem rational at all. Why they would bring back the exact guy they fired 4 years prior after he clearly wasn't even one of the initial options for the role doesn't make any sense to me or anyone else. Those are the broad strokes of things that have gone wrong for this franchise since about June of 2022. But in the last year and a half alone, shit has really hit the fan. The very next day following Steve Clifford's rehire, Miles Bridges was arrested for assaulting his girlfriend in front of their 2 children. I'm not going to share the images that his girlfriend posted, but they were truly horrible. She said she suffered a severe concussion, fractured nose and wrist, and other ailments. On November 3rd, he pleaded no contest to a felony domestic violence charge where he was sentenced to 3 years in probation instead of jail time. This caused Bridges to sit out all of the 2023 season. However, once the season was over, Bridges was formally given a 30-game suspension moving forward by the NBA. This shows more incompetence on the league's part rather than the Hornets for giving him a suspension after he already sat out the entire season, because it meant that there was now light at the end of the tunnel for him. Not only that, but the NBA said it would consider the first 20 games of his suspension already served since he sat out the entire year following this charge. Since the NBA seemingly wanted him back in the league, the Hornets signed him to a 1-year deal as a restricted free agent to officially mark that he would be back in 2024. This is already panning out great for both the NBA and the Hornets, as it was reported a few weeks ago that he broke the terms of his probation in January by continually contacting his ex-girlfriend earlier in the year, and also threw billiard balls at her car, smashing the windshield and denting the windows, and his children were in the car while this all happened as well. Because of this, there was an arrest warrant issued for Bridges where he turned himself in. He ended up making bail and was seen at the team practice facility the very next day like nothing happened. We don't know what's going to happen once the Bridges suspension is up, and if he's going to play while the new situation gets sorted out, but the fact that they let him back at all before this news came out was bad enough. Letting him back directly after he was arrested again and keeping him around shows that this franchise is quite simply morally corrupt, especially when we compare that to the Kai Jones situation. On September 7th, Hornets big man Kai Jones went on Instagram Live and started acting erratically. I'm not here to speculate if he was on drugs or if something else was wrong with him, but there's clearly something off about him right here. The erratic behavior on social media only continued until the Charlotte front office announced that Jones would be away from the team indefinitely while they try and sort out any issues that he may have. This seemed like a very genuine and caring gesture by the team, but once Jones publicly said that he requested a trade from the Hornets, the team immediately waved in. Mind you, this all happened after the most recent Miles Bridges incident. So if you repeatedly beat on women, get arrested, and chuck pool balls at cars, you're more than welcome to keep your spot on the team. And I'm not saying that they should have kept Kai Jones around while he was A, not playing, and B, being a distraction to the team, but they clearly put up with a lot worse when dealing with Bridges. So once again, a decision of theirs just doesn't seem to make sense. It's pretty clear that from top to bottom, the Hornets are in need of some desperate changes. I know that the other 29 teams in the league aren't perfect and definitely have their flaws, but the amount of things that this team has done incorrectly in the last couple years is truly staggering. Hopefully they figure things out and get back on track. But until then, I think they're the team with the worst overall situation in the entire league. Let me know what you guys think in the comments regarding what the Hornets need to do to turn things around. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.